Welcome to Beyond the Block, a Web3 focused podcast where in each episode we'll explore a topic impacting our industry. Joined by an esteemed industry colleague, we'll dive deep into how it's driving our businesses. This is, of course, all powered by Kadena, the only truly scalable Layer 1 proof-of-work blockchain. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Block. I am Annelise Osborne and I am so excited to be here with our newest strategic advisor, Bea O'Carroll, who is going to share with us her experience, her ideas. She's been in crypto for a long time trading and is one of the thought leaders, I believe, in the crypto and DeFi space. So Bea, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome. I've been a huge fan of Kadena for a long time.
So I would love to dive in with you telling us a bit about yourself and your crypto journey.
My crypto journey. So my crypto journey started with my brother, who was living in my house in 2013 and who accosted me when I came home from work one day, telling me all about this amazing thing, Bitcoin, that he read about and how it's just going to be revolutionary and I need to know all about it. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, looks cool, but I'm not sure. So I was not one of the ones who went down the rabbit hole immediately. I was like, yeah, this looks cool. Ain't nothing going on with the rent. I'll keep an eye on it and keep moving. Fast forward 2 years and a colleague of mine from Citibank had left the bank and joined a company, and he reached out and was like, hey, I don't know if you know what this is, but I'm working for a Bitcoin company and I really think you should talk to them. So then I was like, oh, okay, this is real. There's like companies doing this and I can use my background because my background is traditional capital markets, traditional finance. And I'm like, there's some way I can get involved with this. So I started reading about it. And what made the decision for me was when I understood the power of peer-to-peer transfer of value, of the ability to take out the middleman and allow people to own their own value, to understand what that means, and to be able to transact with whomever on their own responsibility.
Exciting. And so how did you get into the space? So you moved into the Bitcoin company, or what was the...
Yes, sorry. So what happened was I had a chat with them. That company was called ItBit, and it's now called Paxos. And they had a trading desk that was set up ancillary to the exchange. So the ItBit exchange was their primary business at the time. They had a trading desk. I joined to help with the trading desk, and then that was 2015. And then relatively quickly after that, they were exploring the blockchain aspect of things. And my passion has really been around markets. So that led me to kindly part ways with ItBit. And then I went to Circle actually in 2017 and helped them build out their trading desk. That role was absolutely tremendous. My remit was to be in front of anyone, anywhere who is even thinking about trading crypto in size. Another salient point is when I started in 2015, it was just Bitcoin. ETH hadn't launched yet. So going through from a trading and markets perspective and watching how this market was launching and responding to new projects, new assets, things like ETH and ETH Classic, and how they handled, different technological events, shall we say, has just been fascinating. So joining Circle in 2017 prior to the bull run was a magical time, I will say without hyperbole. It was pretty good time to be alive, as they say.
So you talk about markets. So you're really interested in the markets. Can you kind of give us an idea of how you see the crypto markets? And that can be today. I think there's a lot of people that have experience but don't have a deep knowledge, or just would welcome your input on what is a market, where do you think it's going, that sort of thing.
So our market is a really interesting one. It's quite easy to become jaded and or cynical. If you look at any of the, if you go onto CoinGecko and you just look at hundreds and hundreds of these coins with the different market caps, and how are you supposed to know? What are you supposed to choose? Is it the quality of the product? Is it the quality of the marketing, right? So it never gets boring. And it's one where you really need to keep your eye on. So one thing that I've always said to friends and family and people that are kind of new and exploring the ecosystem is when you're starting to invest in assets like that, it's really important to look at that almost like Vegas money, right? Because you're not in our ecosystem, you don't just have market risk, you've got security risk, right? You've got counterparty risk depending on the venue and where you're trading. Like there are multiple different areas that you need to be aware of and paying attention to. That's all part of the sovereignty thing too, though, right? I mean, I feel like all of the glitchiness of our world all kind of leads to this end result of like, not your keys, not your coin, right? You are responsible for managing your seed phrases. You are responsible in general for your wallet. So starting to realize like you're responsible for where you trade. And if that exchange has the correct, robust security measures so you don't get hacked, or does it, is illegally operating in a jurisdiction, for example, and suddenly gets shut down. So there's lots of little quirky things that really keep you on your toes.
So lots to learn. So before we kind of dive in a little further, I'd love to know about what are the similarities between TradFi when you went to trading kind of crypto from that, and then also differences?
So I think probably the only similarity is that you're making a market at something. So someone is asking you for a price, right? They're either looking to sell or buy, and you provide them with that price. So from a price discovery standpoint, it's pretty different. From an infrastructure standpoint, it's very different. From an operational standpoint, it's very different. So in general, my background has been on the OTC trading side of things. And I haven't worked on a trading desk in about 3 or 4 years. So like now there's a lot more companies that are doing streaming and trading via API and interfaces. But the way we had been, the majority of people were trading were, on Telegram, and you agree a price and the other side goes first, and they send you the cash and you send them the coins, or they send you the coins and you send them the cash. Which when I was telling my colleagues from previous jobs, like, what, are you kidding me? Like that's really how this works. But it's a new market, right? So like any new market, a lot of the financial markets, as you know, Annelise, started the same way. The trades are agreed over Bloomberg Messenger, right? And it's pretty manual. You agree the price, you do the trade, you settle it, and you've got a confirmation. So high level can be similar to newer and or niche markets, but when you get into the weeds, it's like, what price do you use? You really need to know your counterparty. You have to be very aware that like you're trading with the person who they say they are. You need to do video calls, for example, to make sure that person is the person who's legally cleared and KYC to do the trade with you. You need to make sure that the asset that you're trading aligns with your licenses and your approvals to trade. So for example, if an asset is deemed to be a security and you are not a broker, that is a problem. And because that area is very gray for us in our market, you'll see a number of firms, exchanges, and trading desks in our world that, despite them having teams of lawyers and despite them doing analyses on the assets and how they're trading them and what their regulatory status are, they still get notified that they have some inquiries behind them. So again, at the risk of repeating myself, it's not for the faint of heart, and it's definitely one that keeps you on your toes.
Well, I would think to an extent that a lot of it is just, technology upgrades, right? I feel like the crypto world is a little bit like the FX world, where it's, granted, FX has currency reserves behind it generally. But the idea of trading versus the volatility, I guess, is what I'm saying. And maybe this is a next step, like high frequency trading changed traditional finance. The floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Think of what it looks like today versus what it looked like 20 years ago. It's very different because technology is a step. So I don't know. I do recognize we have our challenges, but I also feel like this is the way that technology is going, and it is upgrading finance.
Yeah, and you can see the upgrade and improvements in our world and infrastructure, right? Because you have issues for us, like with wallets, right? If you give someone an incorrect wallet address, that back. There's no like concept of decaying, right? So
that's
how
centralized versus decentralized, right?
Correct. Exactly. However, you have policies and procedures in place now where you've got like whitelisted wallet addresses, and everybody does, generally the good hygiene and operational procedure is that you'll do a test transaction with the person first. You're not just going to send a random large amount of any asset without being sure that it's the right thing, right? You got to make sure that you're protecting against bad actors on your side in-house in terms of like multi-sig wallets, for example, and making sure that you've got thresholds in place that people on the operational side can manage the balances, and you don't end up with what we've seen in traditional finance with either people hiding fat finger trades or actually like hiding losses and trying to paper cover them. Our books and records, if you will, are on chain for the most part. So you have a swifter and very clear level of transparency.
Yes, the anonymity is no longer really, you're not really anonymous. I think we found that out tracking down Silk Road and other kind of wallets, even Tornado Cash. But so before you brought up I have so many questions just from the things we've talked about already. But you did mention Kadena and that you were familiar with Kadena when we launched, and now you're an advisor to us, and I'm obviously there full time. I would love to kind of get your take on how you see the chain, the company, the opportunities before I dive in and forget that we're talking about on a Kadena podcast.
Absolutely. So I met the team in the very beginning. 2018, I believe, was the first time I met Stuart and Will, and Monica Quaintenance was there at the time. I am a very big fan of proof of work. So I think the company, to take your questions like that, the company is really impressive. The gravitas and the experience of the founding team is remarkable. So that these are people who understand what it's like to build an innovative technology within the confines, for lack of a better word, of a very highly regulated traditional financial structure, to come out to raise money. They also have shown, in terms of longevity, like the amount of projects that we said that have come and gone relatively swiftly and relatively spectacularly. Kadena falls into the trustworthy, like still here, prudently manage their treasury. We're not dogmatic about or religious in their technological decisions, right? If I remember correctly, Kadena started originally as a permission chain. When they realized that keeping a pulse on the market and seeing what's going on, they sort of shifted to hybrid, and now have evolved to public chain and really to embracing like, okay, what can we do? And how can we build this in a manner that traditional financial institutions, it's very easy for them to engage. And additionally, the traditional financial institutions can leverage the expansive sort of network of the broader public blockchain world.
So DeFi, so actually questions that you brought up. One, you brought up ownership. Let's dive in, or sovereignty. Let us dive into kind of the opportunities, the differences, kind of how you see the world shifting and the benefits that decentralization plays.
Yes. So the inherent rub or friction that we have as a market is that natively we are a not my keys, not my coins people, right? That doesn't work for funds and for banks and for treasuries, as you know. As we talked about a little bit earlier, in general, any sort of a corporate entity structure has waterfall thresholds in terms of risk and dollar amounts of assets that they can move. You can't have one person in charge of a wallet, right? It just doesn't work like that. In general, you need to have it, the ability to be accessible by multiple people for many reasons. How things have evolved on the crypto side, also you have like one protocol needs one wallet, right? Exciting things I think that Kadena has done recently is the Spire Key wallet that you announced, right? So trying to make it easier for people to manage their own assets in a safe and secure way on their phone. So turning your phone into a hardware wallet, essentially. And then when you start to extrapolate where you can go from that, it gets really exciting because you can get into the digital identity piece, right? You can get into, am I managing a treasury? I can use the Kadena Spire key to be like, okay, I'm signing off on my approval. Then it goes to you, Annelise. You can say, no, actually, I said I wanted this transfer of funds to be $4 million, not $3 million, reject, right? It just makes it easier for people on the go to be able to prudently manage assets.
I believe that we need to make Web3 less clunky. Not everyone loves Web3, but the crypto digital asset world less clunky, right? But because part of that is really just the UI UX. But I think a number of people are working on that, but we are definitely working on that, which is the idea behind kind of Spire Key as an example of how do we, especially with the world going, the digital native world, right? If we look at the generations and the way that finance is moving, and also, Gen Z and millennials, I think that there's really a requirement to be able to have things mobile and move forward. So from a digital identity, you brought this up. So obviously that's something that I think that you are passionate about. How do you see blockchain helping with digital identity, and on what examples? Obviously, there are a number of different aspects to digital identity.
Well, I thought you'd never ask. So for me in the digital identity world, there's a million different ways you can go. There are a lot of people working on this from a lot of different aspects. I will speak to the topic that has captured my attention for the last couple of years, which are the age verification laws that have been passed both here in the US as well as in a number of European countries and Australia. So recently in the news, so the age verification laws cover the adult industry as well as social media. There's been a lot of press coverage around protecting children on Instagram, on TikTok, making sure that you have children under a certain age aren't able to access. Equally important to make sure that adults are not able to access children's areas, right? So think Roblox chats, think YouTube Kids, etc., that you don't have adults masquerading. Now, the solutions that have been proposed to date are not ideal in that many of these laws are asking you to get fully KYC or know your client cleared, right? So you give someone your passport or they scan your face biometrically. All of this goes to a company that says, yep, B is over 18. She is able to access this particular website, right? Now, when this happens, there's an ability for surveillance, right? There's also the possibility for surveillance. There's also the possibility that this third party that's doing my KYC clearance gets hacked. Like, well, I don't really want to give you my passport, right? I don't want you to have this information and then somebody hacks you and knows who I am and what my birthday is and what country I'm a citizen of. So from a ZK perspective, which is another area that I know Kadena has been really active in, and I'm excited to get into with your Lurk Labs partnership, is ZK feels to me to be a natural solution to that, right? Because I'm in this industry, would have no problem because I understand it. But I think people in general, if you know that you're maintaining control of your identity, your passport, your driver's license, right? It's verified that it's a valid credential, and you can wrap it in a zero knowledge proof. And then basically all you need is the dreaded QR code, but you need some sort of way of communicating with the website, right? The website asks, is this person over 18? The ZK proof gives you yes or no, right? It doesn't need to know that I live on, 130th Street. It doesn't need to know that my birthday is in August, right? It just says yes or no. And that's why personally, I am the most excited about the potential of zero knowledge proofs with specific regard to digital identity. And I'm really excited to see what Kadena has in store for us this year.
Very exciting. We are working on zero knowledge proofs, as you mentioned. We are not, Lurk is now Argument. So we've been working
sorry
on
about
Argument.
that. Yes.
That's okay. No, there's always change going on, right? The only constant. So we're super excited. We have a bridge that's coming live in January. And we think there's a lot of benefits, especially working kind of in the institutional space, that privacy is super important and permissioning when we're dealing with regulated securities. So I do recognize it works across DeFi as well. But we are looking into other projects outside of that, which we'll launch shortly. But I think there's a lot of parallels that we can work together on. I was looking at wallets, but how do you put privacy in a wallet without offering the opportunity for with the KYC AML, right? That's a question. Right?
Yep.
That's something that we're working on. So, lots of different things out there. Okay, so that's about kind of sovereignty. That's about privacy. We talked a little about zero knowledge. So can you share a little bit about your ideas of zero knowledge proofs being used in identity, like specific examples or things that are being worked on right now in that industry?
Sure. So there's a company called, I'll give a timely example. There's a firm called ZK Passport. And essentially what they've done is come up with a wallet similar to what we mentioned, that is you are able to load any passport or identity card that has the little chip insignia on it. You can tap it, it loads into your wallet, and then you can prove who you are without sharing the underlying data with the receiver. So for example, DevCon is the big Ethereum developers conference that's happening in Thailand next week, I believe, and Bangkok. And ZK Passport created an app that allows you to prove what country you're in. They were giving a 90% discount, I think, to any developer from Southeast Asia that wanted to attend. And they used the zero knowledge proof technology to be able to allow you to tap your passport, prove that you're from a country without having the receiver keep a copy of your passport or have any kind of database log. So that's pretty cool. Privado ID, Blarify, and Cornhub, which kind of came out of the ZK Passport guys, they're all working on age verification and KYC zero knowledge wrappers to make sure that your identity is protected.
I'm very interested in it from a regulatory perspective, right? So if any of this from a securities perspective or whitelisting
or from strategy. So as far as I know, and I could be wrong because this isn't my day to day, is that where we are, ZK hasn't achieved the sort of mass distribution yet where it's been able to be battle tested for a regulatory agency. I might be wrong there. There's an awful lot of work being done and a lot of companies doing it, but I haven't personally, I don't think I've heard of anyone.
But even like passports, right? When we're passing through countries, like what is it that they're really looking for? And do they need all that data? So I feel like there's even from a government perspective, I think it'd be beneficial.
Oh, for sure.
I think digital identity for countries outside of ours where you're not given a birth certificate when you are born. I think there's so many different opportunities that it can help, even from a banking and access perspective. So anyway, so many places to go. So, okay, reining it in a little bit, recognizing that we're way off topic of the list of questions, by the way, but it's super exciting just to chat to you. So, kind of institutional growth and DeFi initiatives.
Yes.
This was one of the first ideas of how do you see kind of institutional growth in this space from a DeFi perspective? I personally believe TradFi and DeFi will merge in time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I think we'll find ways like identity to figure out KYC AML. But I'm answering the question, what do you think about institutional growth and DeFi?
So broadly speaking, I think the possibilities are absolutely scintillating. Practically speaking, I agree with you in the marathon, not a sprint. There are a couple of big obstacles currently. For example, lack of KYC and AML, right? Being able to identify who your counterparty is and where the assets are coming from and to. Part of DeFi, as it's kind of come along for the past couple of years, has been predicated on open economic access for all, right? If you have a wallet and you have the assets, you jump in and you can go. So theoretically, this is great, but it poses a problem for larger institutions, as you mentioned, because one of my first questions when this was coming up was hot a couple of years ago, and I was like, well, I was approached by a DAO who wanted to liquidate some of their treasury. And I'm like, well, I don't even, who do I book this trade against? Like, who am I facing? Because sometimes there's no entity, right? And it's like, oh, but it's a DAO and it's the community. And I'm like, okay, but I need to book this. Like, I don't, at a very, very practical level, it can prove some challenges. On the exciting other end of the spectrum, the possibilities are really exciting, because if you think of what you can do now when you're limited with wires that take, you have T+2 settlement, right? Or sometimes, like, I send wires internationally relatively regularly, and it's always like, this could take 7 to 12 days to clear. I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, I wish if I could just send crypto, like, this would be a lot easier, right? So if you think about how you could almost turbo boost the traditional financial market, being able, like, again, everything needs to go slowly, right? Because there are business and profitable verticals that have evolved and grown out of the delays that people have had to manage, right? Of knowing that you've got, 2 days in the middle between you do the trade and you settle it. If you think about the exciting possibilities of being able to, amplify who you can reach, what you can do, how quickly you can trade intraday. Yeah. I think that's pretty powerful stuff. And if there was a way, for example, just to loop back to our digital identity, if you could quickly and securely prove who you are, right? Prove that you got your assets legally. You aren't a ransomware bad actor, right? For example, you ZK your KYC, right? You know who you are. I don't really need to know who you are, Annelise. I just need to know you're another person who's been cleared, right? And then to be able to trade and access multiple markets at the same time, like, can I use my crypto balances as collateral for options trading in the traditional world, right? Or for a mortgage, right? Can I see everything in the same place? And can you lock up my digital tokens that represent X because I'm pledging them as collateral to be able to do Y margin trade, right? Like, that kind of stuff is very exciting, because you're broadening the pool of people who, theoretically, will be able to participate.
So you mentioned that you're doing cross-border payments, but you're not using crypto. So who are you sending? Why aren't you using crypto?
Because the people that I need to send the money to can't accept it. Yeah, or they can't get out of it on the other side.
On the same idea of programmable money. So what are your thoughts on, we can just do stablecoins, and ideally how you see that rolling out into mainstream adoption?
So I'm a little bit of a contrarian on stablecoins because they scare me. I obviously understand the importance, right? And you need to have, if nothing else from a trading perspective, right, you need a consistent and relatively stable base pair for whatever you're trading. For me, I still look at it as counterparty risk, right? Depending on who it is. But in general, I'm giving you $10 of my money, you're giving me $10 of your digital token, right? I'm essentially trusting that you're not, like, yes, there are attestations, et cetera. But at the end of the day, when I look at the endpoints of risk here, my risk is to that token, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that makes me a little nervous, and as you and many of my other friends have had to suffer through, like, I'm a privacy maxi, for lack of a better word. I would like to say lunatic, but I don't want to be too negative. But basically, I still use a MetroCard. Like, I never tap my phone on the subway because it's not anybody's business where I'm going, and I don't want any kind of financial surveillance. To me, a lot of stablecoins and CBDCs represent a significant amount of financial surveillance, and that worries me. That being said, I understand and am incredibly fortunate to be a part of committees that are working to create products that address that situation, right? So as you were saying with ZK and the potential for ZK with regulated markets and protecting, like, your alpha strategies or portfolio positions or whatever, right? To be able to transact in a stablecoin without having it trace back to see like, oh, B went to Nepal last week and then she went from Nepal to Argentina. And like, what was that about? And, you know, I think we should just shut off her coin or like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. While yes, it's an extreme example. And yes, I am a lunatic probably. Those are real concerns for me that I think we need to address as a market. And I don't think we can sweep them under the rug.
So how is that any different than my credit card?
And what?
Do you buy your?
I don't use credit cards either. I only use cash or Bitcoin. Sorry, I'm like on the extreme.
How are you buying air tickets with all your travel?
No, I mean look, I live on the planet, right? I have to use credit cards for hotels and for airline tickets, etc. If I have to use it, I use it. But my preference is to only use cash or crypto.
I do feel like it's such a society with data and data being such a driver for so many different things, but I use my credit card all the time. I never have cash.
Yeah, I mean, most people
need to figure me out. And also, even you were talking about, I was wondering if you bought your Metro card with cash, because the Metro cards they know when you've used it, so they can technically track that. And if you use it if you bought it with a credit card, because they can give you back your money, so they know who you are.
Yep. So it all goes through. I mean, part of the reason behind this, before everyone is like, okay, I'm shutting this off, this woman is bananas, is part of the is part of the like financial equality and freedom, right? There are a number of people for various reasons who can't get access to a credit card, right? Or a bank account. They don't have the right paperwork. Maybe if we had the digital identity, they could get the paperwork, who knows? But basically, the fact that when I go into a lunch store in Manhattan and they tell me they don't take cash, I generally won't buy there, because I'm like, can be construed as discriminatory, right? Because if I have $10 and I want to pay my sandwich in $10 and you're telling me you don't take cash, like I don't want to live in a society where you can't have cash. Like I think cash is the great equalizer, and I think making people use credit cards, it just ends in tears for an awful lot of people. If you're not teaching kids how to manage your credit and what does it mean and how are you financially responsible? Like I've just seen an awful lot of examples where it doesn't go well.
It's interesting, but I also think that some of the small business owners that I have known would move to credit cards because there's graft in cash. So they expect to lose a certain percentage of the cash that's there versus. But there's always, it's kind of what's the best of the options, right?
Right.
The least worst of the evils. But super exciting. So I know we're coming to a close. I would love to hear kind of ideas of what you would like to see on Kadena. How can we build and what can we do?
I'm really excited about Kadena too, because I think proof of work is also catching a bit again these days. And the fact that you have the security of a proof of work chain, like with the scalability, I mean, I think the new the new way of wording is the horizontal scaling architecture, right? So you've been able to increase your throughput in terms of transactions, but maintain the security of proof of work is really exciting to me. So in terms like selfishly, what I'd love to see, like I'd love to see the ZK age verification solution, right? Like I think that that's fantastic. But from seeing something through to the end, because the founders of Kadena have come from the traditional financial institutional background, I would love to see that come to fruition. And I know that you're working on a number of pilots and projects. Like I'm very excited to see what's coming up this year for the projects that you have cooking, and to see that really kind of go first as a pilot and then at scale. I'm very excited for that.
I'm super excited to see. I think we're getting more comfortable. We do have we have regulatory gray, we need black and white. But I do think there's places in the world, right, that there's a little bit more of guidelines. And so we're excited about projects. And I'm also super excited just to see the industry as a whole is picking up. One thing we're really focused on, I will highlight, is interoperability now. It is working within the ecosystem and within the industry. And so that I think we're going to see a lot of in the next few months, which I'm very excited to announce. And hopefully we'll have projects. The bigger ones take longer. But yes, we have a lot coming up the pipe. So Any last things we did not address that you would like to share, or topics you'd like to discuss?
Well, I would like to ask you what you're most excited about. I mean, you've had your book published this year. You've been traveling like crazy. You're meeting all sides of the ecosystem, right? You've got the traditional conversations. You've got the deep crypto conversations. You've got degen stuff cooking and the ZK. Like, what do you think has been is most?
It's been a fun year. So I can wear it even different hats. So one, when I first was talking to Stuart about Kadena and joining, I love the architecture and what's built and the idea, but I don't have a crypto background. And so I do have an understanding of blockchain, digital assets, and how it works with the crypto world. But so to me, that's been super interesting to dive deeper into DeFi, recognizing what's been built, how it's been built. And my perspective is how we're going to be able to utilize what's there in traditional finance. Granted, we're not quite there yet, which is a lot of, KYC, AML, privacy that we talked about, and there's a few other factors. But I love, because I think there's also private credit, for example. That's what really DeFi lending is, right? So I think we speak a different language, but a lot of the same things are being built and discovered and done. So that's been super interesting. And it's just working with such great people I really enjoy. Also, with the book launch, I have had an amazing opportunity to meet so many people. I wrote a book, for those of you who don't know, and it was really focused on education in the space, so people can differentiate, the average person to differentiate between blockchain and Bitcoin, because a lot of them don't know the difference. And so the number of people that I have been able to meet at different signings, and I always take the time to speak to them, it's so thrilling to have such a wide cross section of globally, really just different ages and demographics of all sorts, and an interest, like an actual deep-hearted interest, both from, not just from finance and tech, but from students and just people that have their own curiosities about it. And so that I've really enjoyed, opening up my world a bit, because a lot of times we get caught in our little circles. And so it's just really wonderful for the mind to get out there and do. So super excited. Love the conversations that we're having. I'm a huge believer that this is the way that the world is moving to public chains. So it's going to take a little while. I think, again, marathon, not sprint, just because if we're talking about institutions, and the reason I think institutions, so much money is moved every day, and it would more efficiently be moved if it was digital and if it was on chain. And so that's why I'm pushing institutions. It's not that there's anything, like the crypto ecosystem is huge and amazing, but I do think that it will continue to grow, and there will continue to, merge together. And we won't talk about blockchain. It will just be opportunities that are there. So I'm super excited every time a new company steps up. UBS just launched a tokenized fund.
Yep.
Or there's always all the new entrants doing things like that. To me is super exciting. So as well as where we're getting with technology, right? The idea of having more opportunities for privacy with ZK, or coming up with new opportunities to have an easier, less clunky experience. That's what all of that excites me. So thank you for asking.
Awesome. Of course, Annelise. I always love our chats.
Yes. Well, Bea, thank you so much for joining us. This was great. So much for me to think about what can we build next. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. Honored to be here and really excited to be part of the Kadena's next year.